Someone said to me once, they said the people that care most about the applause, which tends to be like performers and comedians and stuff, also care the most about the booze.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah.
Like it's not possible just to care about one side of that spectrum. You can't just care about the applause and then say, oh, booze don't matter, I don't care, I'm invincible.
Yeah.
It's feedback, isn't it?
No, definitely. It's definitely feedback. And, you know, like audiences that upset me or online trolls, I mean, I do consume quite a lot of that. If I'm brutally honest with myself, I probably consume more of it than I should, and read it. And again, I'm like, I think it's fine. I think it sort of bounces off me, but maybe it doesn't bounce off me as much. And I'm like, it's all stored away somewhere. You know, it's good. But I don't know, I also like part of me, and I'm not encouraging people to troll me online, but I'm like, it's good to like keep your ego in check as well. I do like constructive criticism as well, I think is very useful. And like some feedback, because if you didn't have any of that and you were just like, you just went on the reaction to the audiences of paid punters that have come to see you, and clearly are like on side, and it's like a home gig because they're, you know, fans of you that bought a ticket to you, and that was your only like interaction, and that was where you kind of garnered what like your relationship with the public was. You would think you were just like the Messiah. And so it's quite good to be reminded, there are some people that find you a bit much. But
has their feedback, those people, those trolls, has it made you a better comedian?
I mean, every now and again I get quite a good, like, you know, joke from something that someone said.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't think it's made me a better comedian. But what someone says on Twitter that my new hairstyle looks like a Tesco's value Richard Hammond. I'm like, I'll say that. Those are quite rare. Normally it's like, why is this posh twat on television every time I turn it on? No, I can't want that.
What's a bad gig? You know, for someone like you, what does that feel like? What does it look like?
I think, I've had so many bad gigs. Back in the day, it was going and doing 10 minutes in a pub and performing to 20 people. You're set up to fail, really, because it's never going to be a stormer, because the environment is not conducive to comedy, because you're in a noisy pub fighting against a, you know, fruit machine, and some of the people are on their phones, some of the people are sort of half listening to you. There's like a tinny microphone, terrible sound system, and you're going on like 10th on the bill, and everyone's a bit drunk, and you're never going to kill that gig. And then you will go out and you do 10 minutes of your material, and it like barely raises a titter, and then you've got to get on a train and go back to London and be in your own thoughts for 2 hours. Like, that's pretty soul crushing. But I don't know why. I like, and there were a lot of those at the beginning. I think probably because I was like, still at that point, I was living in Manchester with all of my mates in a student house and having like a great time. Didn't have many worries in the world, because I was 18, 19, and I was going off and doing these gigs, and sometimes they'd go well and sometimes I would crash and burn. But I don't know, it just didn't, like, I didn't feel the pressure. That's what was so amazing about that period of my life, is that I just don't remember feeling any pressure. And now if I tank a gig or I go out and, you know, mess up the Brit Awards, I do feel the pressure and I do feel the anxiety of it all. And I didn't have as much professional anxiety back then, because I was sort of on a relatively upward trajectory. And, you know, it all felt so full of possibility. I just think I was sort of unburdened by all of the kind of anxieties that I would have now as a comedian and a performer.
Reminds me of my conversation with Lewis Capaldi. He told me about singing in pubs in Scotland and like no one was really listening.
Yeah.
And he almost talks about it as if he would prefer to go back and do that now, because there's no arenas, there's no expectations, there's no pressure. And I actually think he said on the podcast, I think he said like, I just want to sing in a pub in Scotland.
Yeah.
Your success and his success have meant that's I would say not. It's certainly possible.
Yeah, yeah.
But even if you were announced as being in a pub, expectation would show up.
Yeah. And I connected with his documentary in that aspect when I watched it and saw like him articulate some of those elements, because it is so true. And you know, you do a show now and you're putting it on in an arena, and like the level of expectation is so much higher, and you've got to shift, you know, a huge amount of tickets. There's going to be reviewers there. You've got to entertain like a vast crowd. If it goes wrong, like that's a news event. And back then there was none of that. Like I'd die in a pub, you know. If Jack Whitehall crashes and burns in the middle of an empty forest, does he make a sound? And my forest was a pub in Preston.
Does that make it less fun? Is there like a
I quite
certain
enjoyed
point?
it in a weird, and I still do to an extent when I'm like, maybe more so now, like when I'm working it through, there is like a sadomasochistic thing that quite enjoys like the tricky gigs and like working out why it hasn't worked and what I need to do to get it to work. Like I do.
But I mean, the pressure now, does that make it less fun?
Oh, the pressure. Sorry. Yes.
Because you've used the word professional anxieties a few times.
Yeah. I mean, that element of it does, for sure. And I don't remember feeling that when I was in my kind of early 20s. But all of a sudden, they sort of creep up on you, and you're in your own thoughts a lot more, and constantly like I don't know, just thinking about like. I just, for me, it's like worry that it will all go away. Like that's always like the kind of the greatest fear is that it's just going to stop. And I've loved doing it, but yeah, there are lots of other added pressures that weren't existent when I started doing it. And I look back on it and do kind of like miss that headspace.
A lot of people can relate to that fear of worrying that it'll all go away. Even, you know, people that have climbed the corporate ladder, they've gotten to a certain position. And I've seen it a lot of the times with some of my friends and even in some of my companies where people will say to me that they're just trying to kind of hang on to where they are.
Yeah.
And when you have that mindset, it seems like it can be quite unenjoyable because there's that constant sort of, as you describe, anxiety. But also, I'm not sure if everyone does their best work when they're kind of hanging on, because there's not the sort of mental freedom to fully express or to relax or take time off. So I'm not sure if we do our best work. Is that what you're saying? You feel like you have a constant worry that everything you've built might someday change. And I guess the more important question is, do you know where that's come from in you? That idea that it could just.
No, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where it comes from, but and I don't know. And I don't, and it's not like a cancel culture thing of me going, oh, look, I'm worried I'm going to say something, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm going to get cancelled, and then I'm never going to be able to do shows again. It's not even like linked to that. Although obviously there is like a small chance that could happen. I don't necessarily feel like I push the boundaries in such a way that feels likely, but. Yeah, I don't know how I've allowed that to sort of creep up on me, and I think the key to not allowing that to consume you is to sort of just try to refocus your mind on like what's important, and you know, ultimately, some of the things that are, you know, the concerns that like build up as professional anxieties ultimately aren't as important, as long as you're doing, like, ultimately, as long as I'm still doing stand-up and still doing what I love and still getting to, you know, act and perform, it doesn't necessarily matter, you know, how I'm doing that. I'm doing what I love, and that should be enough. And then also just like refocusing my energies on like my work-life balance and focusing on what's important, my relationship, family. Those are the things that make me happy, and as long as those are working, then I think I will feel fulfilled. And so I think it's how I like frame that in my head.
even from doing this, because I'm not a journalist, or in fact, I didn't go to
Yeah.
podcast school or whatever.
Yeah.
I still sit here and go, how the fuck is this still a thing? Like,
Yeah.
how are people still listening to this? We admit it. I mean, Jack did productions beforehand, but Jack, you've never done anything like this before, have you? I've never done anything like this before. So it's all a little bit, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Just keep going, and hopefully nobody notices us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's like almost the feeling, because you almost assume that all of your competitors or the other people that are doing it in your space, they have some certificate
Yeah.
that has like given them the right
Yeah.
and a rule book that we're not privy to.
Yeah.
Can you relate to any of that? That feeling that like,
Yeah. I mean, there is, and there is no kind of like playbook for it, is there, like with a career and with, you know, with all of it. So I like the worst thing you can do is start like comparing yourself to other people and like thinking about that too much as well. And I mean, so many times I'm just like, why don't I just delete all social media from my phone? I think that would be such a good thing for my like mental well-being. I just haven't quite brought myself to do it yet, but maybe that's something that I should try. But it's just the worrying about stuff that is not worth worrying about. It's like, I wish I want to get better at that. I really want to like work at that.
what impact does that have on you?
That I'm not present when I should be present. I think that's where I feel it is most frustrating in my life, is when I'm worrying about fucking nonsense that doesn't need to be consuming me, and I'm not present with friends and family and people that I need to like give more of myself to.
What's an example of something that might consume you, like a little troll online or like a review? Or
I mean, that can take me out for a couple of days. Like rejection, professional rejection, not getting a part in something, a bad review, things like that. And then for a couple of days, I'll sort of be spinning out, and then, you know, I'll catch myself doing it and be like, oh, what am I doing? I don't need to do that. I have more sensitivity, I think, than I sort of let on. I've always sort of billed myself as being quite resilient and thick-skinned, which I am to a degree, but I think there are things and elements where I am a little bit more sensitive and vulnerable than I tell people.
you and me both.
Yeah.
You and me both. And I think obviously in different jobs that I've had, I've been the CEO of the companies. So you kind of learn to put up everything's fine.
Yeah.
Cool. But you can be behind the scenes, like spinning out a little bit for a couple of days based on something. When you say spinning out, what does that, if I'm Roxy,
Yeah.
your wonderful partner,
Yeah.
what would Roxy observe when Jack is spinning out?
That I'm in a sort of weird fugue state, because I'm also one of those people that just like, I'm a barrier. I don't articulate a lot of these emotions, and I definitely, I don't know whether it's because of my background or my upbringing, but I'm someone that doesn't really want to burden people with them. I feel like, as well as a comedian, as a funny person, again, I feel like I'm letting people down if I'm like a Debbie Downer and talking about stuff that is gonna, you know, kill the mood. I don't like conflict. I don't like to depress people. So I think bury it all, put it on a brave face, and then just maybe not quite myself. So you probably wouldn't even realize it was going on. But I think for Rox, it's hard because sometimes I'm just like a little bit away with the fairies, but that's because I'm having this like internal dialogue.
For 3
Is
days.
everything going to be okay? Oh my God, they hate me. No, you're going to be fine. And that's all going on. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
When you bury stuff though, like a seed, it kind of grows. I always think this, and I think it subtly changes us over time. All the things we have buried, like even if we don't ever express it or whatever, I feel like it kind of just infects our character a little bit.
Yeah.
That's certainly what's happened to me for sure.
Yeah.
Just over time, I think slowly the things that I've like buried or ignored, they kind of just weigh me down a little bit, and you might become a little bit snappier or a little bit, you know, more impatient or negative about the world or whatever. Is that the case with you?
Yeah, I think for me the main way it affects me is like it is ultimately just like a focus thing. It's like focusing on it makes me focus on the wrong things, and that's the thing that I struggle with most in my life is work-life balance. I think I'm terrible at work-life balance, and I always have been, because I started when I was 17 and I just didn't stop. And so I used to hate going on holidays. I was like, I don't want to go on a holiday. It's a complete waste of time. And I remember like calling my agent and my dad from a beach somewhere going, I can't wait to get home. And I've always had that like weird attitude to like work and wanting to work. And I'm about to have quite a big life event. And I think that will...
What life event, Jack?
I'm about to have a baby, which I'm so excited about. And also I'm just like, the thing that I pray that it does is just completely like shifts my focus. And I'm so excited to have this little being in the world that is more important than anything else. And I think that's going to be such a healthy thing. And I know that's not necessarily the reason to have a child. I probably should have worked through some of these things before the baby arrived. But like, that's an element of it that for some people might be quite daunting, but I'm like, I think that's going to be amazing. And I'm really, really excited, and I can't wait to be a dad. And I'm like, it just really, really cannot wait to like sort of step up to the plate and try to be the best dad that I can be, and have that as my focus. And when I'm focused on that and not thinking about all of the other stuff, I think it's going to just be great. Maybe that's quite a glass half full.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.